Oh, the light up ahead is fantastic. Super shiny. It's good look. All right. Well, happy Thursday again. Hope you're doing all right. I've had a real bad week, so I apologize. I'm going to be a little low energy. Actually ended up in the ER and in the hospital right after class last week. So nothing contagious. I'm not going to get you sick, just internal issues. So um, yeah, it'll be a day. But we're getting there, getting caught up. We're going to talk about Project Zero. Hopefully it was easy for you. Nothing too tricky here. You probably could have done that in your 150 class, right? Yeah. So it's just a chance just to try some C# syntax, make sure we can get things up and running, make sure Visual Studio works for you with C#. Today we're going to move on to forms. We'll just go to the website here. It's easier. There we go. So we'll move on to forms. So this is additional topic not covered in the text here because form-based programs are more fun. Like just typing stuff like you've done for all of your other classes in a black box and seeing black or white text come back out is really boring. So we're going to look at forms, and this stuff changes all the time, which is interesting. .NET's a pretty alive platform for Windows. You'd think it'd be rather stable, but so if you get out into the industry and you work with forms applications, this is the older version here that has been working on Windows forever. So Windows Forms was one of the first graphical programs that people could start doing in Visual Studio. XAML was sort of the next generation of that, designed for the universal Windows platform. This idea that I can write an app and it'll run on any Windows device, which was like a laptop, the Windows Phone, which didn't last very long. The Xbox will run these apps as well, and this is what we're going to take advantage of for our game at the end of the semester. And then even like the HoloLens platform runs universal Windows platform apps, which is fun. So we do have a HoloLens in the lab we can play with. Getting it to work for lecture demo sort of things just doesn't work well because you can't see anything that I can see if I'm wearing it, and if I'm wearing it, it's this giant headset. But it's fun to play with. There's some cool tutorials out there, and you can get stuff up and running. And augmented reality is really interesting rather than pure virtual reality. I don't know if they sort of do some augmented reality with virtual reality because it turns out it's hard to put stuff on top of what you're seeing. Like the Google Glass experiment didn't go very well for them. And you'd think if anybody could get a product out the door, it'd be Google, but no. So, things are hard and changing, which is a lot of fun. But so we're going to talk about forms today after the project. And then the exercise for forms will be redoing the project as a form. So you have buttons to click on and things to look at rather than typing text in. And again, short and sweet, but just a chance to practice some of these things. So the Windows Forms version will only work on a Windows device. It's based on Windows. I think that is pretty straightforward. The XAML version will only work on Windows devices as well because it's a universal Windows platform. Hector, my friend, thank you for donating to the Student Scholarship Fund here at the University of Michigan Dearborn College of Engineering and Computer Science. You are a legend. Maui is their new cross-platform development platform. I think I already said platform. Looking at how we can write code once in C# and have it run on multiple devices. So it will run on iOS-ish. If you have a Windows device, you can't do that because the architecture is completely different. You can go buy different hardware, or you can just use a Mac to do it. Which, I mean, if we have to have one platform, why do I need two different devices? It's a whole other story too, but that's just sort of how things work sometimes, which is fun. It'll run on Android, and Android you can emulate on Windows, which I have up and running. It's a couple steps. It's not too bad. The tutorials out there are pretty easy for it. So I want to show you folks this stuff because I think it's the most interesting stuff. This one is actually harder to work with, and it's still pretty green. So it's got some issues here. It's not as friendly. So I think we might stick with mostly XAML, just so you've seen it before. I know we're going to come back to XAML again later on. So forms are quick and easy. They work really well, really fast in Windows. XAML is a little bit harder. And then Maui is the new latest and greatest stuff. BlueStack, I don't think so, PJ Buttercups. It's like Visual Studio has like a built-in thing that will download an emulator. So we'll get to all that in a minute. So let me fire up Visual Studio, and we'll do the first project first here, our little terrible tax estimator. A couple of people had asked me for some example output, which I'm sorry I didn't get to until last night because it's been a little nuts here. but I gave bad numbers because I just made it up. I hadn't actually written the solution yet. So if you were in Discord, hopefully you saw that. If not, it's okay. This was the very first one. It's not worth very many points. And basically, if you turn it in and it is close enough, you have points. I'm not like the actual particulars of it. I'm not too concerned at this point here. This was just an exercise for us here. So let me start up a new project. And we're just going to do a console app. This is the newer version of console app, not console app, .NET framework. It's a little bit awkward. It's okay. This is one that runs on .NET Core, so it can run on Linux and Mac as well. Not mobile, which is a whole different thing. Sorry, there's a lot of things that go into this, and it's changing a lot. But we'll do a console app, and I'm going to put it in my GitHub repository for the course here. This is my folder here. And we'll call this one, this is, what do we want to call it? Week 2 tax estimator. That sound reasonable? Hopefully I name things well, and then you can go find them later in here, because if I do everything with a week prefix, hopefully it'll sort nicely. So we'll try that. And then I don't need the same directory. If you wanted the same directory, that's fine. Goodness, my wife DoorDashed dinner, but it has my phone number for DoorDash. Why? I'm sorry. Let me just 1 second here, because they definitely want dinner. I want dinner too, but that's after I get home. Okay, we left it on the porch. Why did they bother calling me? They sent me okay. All right, so .NET 6 Core is the long-term support version. And if you're using 6, it's perfectly fine. We're not going to take advantage of anything in 7. I just prefer latest and greatest. It won't be supported quite as long, but again, at the end of the semester, we're throwing these. I mean, at the end of today, you're throwing this project away. So we don't care if it's supported or not. You're not actually writing this for a tax company, right? It's just for us to practice with. So should be fine. Either version's okay. And then if you like your top level statements, great. If you don't like the top level statements, great. Both ways will work. I think it is probably easier for you to look at if we don't assume the top level statements. This is like a double negative. So saying don't use them means put them in there. If I don't assume that they're there, which is awkward, but we'll get used to it when we do our projects. It won't be too bad here. So I'll make it so it'll have the usual class name, it'll have the main method, and everything goes inside of that. And then we can pull stuff out aside from that here. So got some code I can start writing here. Right, so the first thing we needed to do was ask them how many W-2s they have. Right, so we can just do a quick, we'll change this from hello world to any W-2s I have to enter. And I added all sorts of other nonsense when I was going through the example because I felt really funny last night where it like talked to you. You can make your programs as entertaining as you care. I don't care. It's hopefully more enjoyable for you if it doesn't have to say exactly this letter and exactly this letter and exactly this letter, because that's really tedious here. So how many W-2s, and then we need a place to store that. We'll have our integer for W2 count of W2. I don't know, sure. So we need to get the input, right? That's console.readline. And remember, everything has to be converted here because readline will give me a string, so we can convert. Got lots of options for converting. I think we looked at convert is probably the easy way. To int convert to int 32. Here, we'll give you an integer of whatever I get back from the read line. Okay. Nothing fancy. And then we'll do a quick loop. We can say for int W2 0, W2 is less than my W2 count. Look at that, it's suggesting it for me. I love it. I like when it gives me code. It makes me happy. Sometimes the suggestions are not good though, but it's okay. Yeah.
Originally, when I was using convert down to 32, and I looked up in the book and I saw the other option, the int.parse.
Yep. So int.parse will do the same thing. Int.try_parse will let us handle exceptions. So that's a little bit nicer, but we haven't talked about exceptions yet. So I was going to skip that. Yeah, either way, we'll convert was fine. I didn't care if it crashes on you. Like we're not. We can get to that later once we start talking about exceptions and we get to there. Because you don't like your programs to crash. For some reason, nothing upsets me more than when I'm doing something on my phone and my phone app crashes. Personally, just as a developer, like I'm just offended. Like do better. your app shouldn't crash. Like, I know it's not the best Android phone here, but it's relatively new enough. It shouldn't crash. So it's a good thing to try those. But we'll get to those. So we'll say enter your income from W2 number something or other here, and we can do this as our interpolated string if we want, right? Where we can just stick code in here. So this is my W2, and like if you add 1 to it, W2 0 becomes your W2 number 1. Just to make things friendly. It doesn't matter. We're welcome to confuse your users because it's not that important here. And if we're going to get the income, right, we need a place to put it here. So we might as well start an int for gross income. Starts at 0, right? Then we can take our gross income and add to it. Add my convert int 32 read line. Just copy that. Right, and we'll just do this for every W2. We'll add it in. If you use doubles, great. If you used integers, great. I don't care. One way or the other is fine. I'm sure the IRS will care. Don't use this for actual taxes, right? We are agreeing? Okay, please. I'll get in real big trouble if you use this for taxes. So great. So I have gross income. I outputted it because I'd like to see that it actually did something here. So I might as well. Again, CW is the console write line, and you just tab. We'll autocomplete that for you if you like shortcuts. So your total gross income. I guess gross already means total. That's a little redundant, isn't it? And then we'll get gross income. Just to spit that out here. And then we'll ask about deductions, right? So enter deduction, enter a deduction, or 0 to stop. And really all this goes in a loop where we need to start tracking their deductions. I know we might have had some people who are real particular about where you declare all your variables, and they say everything should be declared at the top. That's all well and good, nice. That's fine. I'm just going to put it down here because I don't care. It'll be there somewhere. Right? It's not like a class where we have everything somewhere. This is just some code here in main. We're just getting something functional. So it starts at 0. Enter deduction, and then really we want to keep on doing this while something. Right? So lots of different approaches for it. I'm fond of something that starts the loop and then ends it when it becomes the right value here. It's 0 to stop. Is that -1 to stop? Makes this a little easier here. We'll do deduction is 0. We can say while my deduction does not equal -1, we will take our total deductions and we will add the deduction here, and then we'll ask him to enter more somewhere in here, and then we'll convert in here, and that'll be our deduction. So any sort of loop is fine. If you did a while true and a break, that's okay too. I have some sort of an aversion to breaks. They just irritate me for no good reason. I just don't like seeing it. I get confused easily. That's probably why. So like if I'm reading a loop and there's like a break in the middle of it and then the loop keeps going, I'm already lost. So it's okay. Maybe this makes more sense. But so as long as we didn't enter a -1, add it. So if we add 0, it hurts nothing. Enter some values. We'll just keep on going. Sure. Now we got some deductions. So then we can check to say, hey, if my total deductions is less than, what is my standard deduction? Is like 12,950 or something? I really shouldn't know that, but okay. And this is sort of ugly to have here as what we call magic numbers, right? We just have a number with, there's no context. So that's generally frowned upon. So that is a nicer thing if you want to come up and like have it a static variable for, this is our standard deduction, 12,950 or something. It's read only. I'm not letting it. I move it. Constant. Read only. There's like 3 different ways I can put it in here. There we go. So constant int, standard deduction, great. And we can throw this in here. This is much nicer. Just a stylistic thing here. So if we were less than that, and then we'll change their total deductions then to the standard deduction. Standard deduction, great. And then we'll spit out what their total deductions are. Just because it's nice to put here. Your total deductions are. Nope, that was a bad copy paste. Sometimes the mouse or the keyboard doesn't cooperate. Okay, and then we get to spit out their adjusted gross income as well. Oh wow, got a bunch of ugly stuff there. Your adjusted gross income is, and we might as well just calculate it right in here. We'll need this one later. We can save it. So we have an int for adjusted gross income is our gross income minus the total deductions, because we'll use this value later. Might as well save it. All right, all that just to get some input. Yeah.
When you're on all tabs on the same stuff, like that part, does that just mean like you're just taking the standard deduction, which is a 12,950, and then just applying it to like it's lower than that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So if you totaled less than this, so if you said, hey, I donated $100 to Salvation Army, I donated $50 to the soup kitchen, I donated $25 worth of clothes to here, whatever. If you come out less than 12,950, the Fed say you can just have 12,950 off, because it's a progressive tax system, so it places less tax burden on people who make less money. Is essentially how that works. Yeah, it just changes the value to this 12,950, and then you can use your digit separator. I should do that too, because this is much nicer to read. You can put underscores in integers. Right? Cool. So we've got our adjusted gross income. Life is good. I'm going to run it real quick just to make sure we're working through it here, because you want to run it a lot, because if you wait till you've done everything and then run it and it doesn't work, it's easy to get confused. Yeah.
Let's say, since we're not necessarily putting a like tax return into consideration, if like the adjusted gross income is less than 0, is it cool if we just defaulted the adjusted gross income to 0?
Yeah, if you know, no taxes. Yeah. So it'd be 0. So that's probably something we're going to check for. Or I've got a couple different approaches you can use, but yeah. So let's just say 3, and we say, hey, here's 15,000, here's 25,000, and here's 35,000. Adds up to 75,000. I think the math is right. Do some deductions. Here's a $1,000 deduction. Here's a $2,000 deduction. Here's -1. -1. -1. Okay. Well, we found an issue. Well, deduction. Oh, I did plus equals. Equals is the right thing here. That's probably a bad copy paste, right? Change the value of it. Don't add to it here. And this is why we try stuff.
Add it on there.
Well, I'm going to add it to total deductions here.
Oh,
the total deductions is my accumulator. Yep. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's probably a way to do it that way, but this should be okay. All right, so 3, 15,000, 25,000, 35,000, and then 1,000, 2,000, -1. We get the standard. That's what we expect. Right? 75,000 minus this number is probably this number. I think we're good so far. So then we can actually figure out all the tax part here. So lots of different ways of going about this here with the different brackets. A straight bunch of if else, if else, if else, if else, if else is very straightforward. Maybe not as elegant. Like we like to imagine a loop is probably a little bit more elegant here. Or even better is we turn the arithmetic into a method. Right? If we're doing the exact same arithmetic every single time, which is your income, let me find that MoneyChimp link here. Did I not link it, MoneyChimp? I think I just showed it. So if your income is more than this and less than this, you pay 10% of that value. If it's more than this but less than this, it's ever so slightly different, because you pay 12% of that income minus this value. Because you've already paid taxes on that $10,000, you don't want to pay taxes twice. No one does. Remember, a pro tip, tax avoidance is legal, tax evasion is illegal. Know the difference. This is why large companies have tax departments. They are professionals at tax avoidance, which is perfectly legal. So the arithmetic here, right? Where you are minus the start of that bracket. Where you are minus the start of that bracket. Where you, top of the bracket minus the start of the bracket, or whatever your income happens to be. So if you're within the range, we take that number minus the start of the bracket. If you're over the range, you get the top of the bracket to the start of the bracket, and you pay that percentage amount here. So we can write a function for ourselves here to calculate that. So we can have some sort of integer, maybe even a double here. It's probably better, right? So we'll have a double for get taxes at bracket. And if you have to give it some things, you have to tell it the start of the bracket, you have to tell it the end of the bracket, and you have to tell it a tax rate. Probably as a double here, right? Cool. So if we are within the range, we do one thing. If we're over the range, we do the other thing. So we can check and say, hey, we probably need the income here, don't we? We need int for income. So if my income is greater than the end of the bracket, It means I'm paying the entire amount. Right? If I made more than $10,275, I'm still only paying 10% of this amount of money, $1,000, $1,027.50, no matter what. Even if you make $10 million, even if you make $40,000, everyone pays the same 10%. This is how that progressive tax system works. Right? That's the arithmetic here. So if I'm more than the end of the bracket, I'm paying the entire amount. So I can just quickly return the end of the bracket minus the start of the bracket times the tax rate. And again, force your order of operations here. Don't do bad things, because it will let you do bad things here. Right? It is happy to multiply first. Right? It's okay at math. Right? Otherwise, we don't do that. Right? Well, what's the other case here? Well, we do want to be careful that it might not just be your income minus the start, because if your income is less than that, we don't want to return anything. So I'm going to have one more here. I can just say, hey, if my income is less than the start of the bracket, I'm just going to return 0. You owe nothing at that percentage, right? And again, you could do these in any order, whatever makes sense to you here. This is probably not the best order, but this is fine, right? Either you made more than the bracket, you made less than the bracket, or now we're in the middle here. We're going to return our income minus the start of the bracket, start of the bracket times the tax rate. Right? So if we're somewhere in the middle, so if I made $30,000, I'm going to take 30,000 minus this number and then multiply that by 0.12 to find out how much I owed at 12%. Right? Because I'm paying 12 cents of every dollar on the dollars earned between this amount and this amount. Okay? So we have a nice little method here for it that we can use. So we need a place to store all of these. Lists are nice. We haven't even gotten to list syntax yet, so I wasn't going to bother with a list. Here, I'm just going to have a bunch of integers here. So we'll have taxes owed at 10%. Well, sure, that's kind of ugly, but that's okay. And we'll take our get taxes here, and we'll say it is your adjusted gross income, the start of the bracket. Now here, I probably want some more values because we want to have nice names. We want to have some context here. So we're going to have a bunch of these constant ints. Start of 10% bracket. That one's easy. That one's 0. And then we just go on down. So we have 10, we have 12, we have 22, we have 24, we have 32, 35, and 37. I think really should not be in your head. This sort of stuff makes me sad. Okay, and then we just need to go and fill these numbers in here. Oh goodness. Let me unpin. There we go. All right, so that one is then 10,275. This one is 41,775, 89,075. I gotta remember my digit separators because these are really easy to miss here too. 170, 050, 215, 950, 539, 900. Did I get one of these wrong? 10.
You didn't start with 0, I don't think.
Oh, that's why. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, these are all incorrect. Goodness. Thank you. You know, double clicking will highlight a whole word for you. I do all sorts of shortcuts. I'm sorry if you haven't seen it before. So double clicking something will highlight the entire word, and then you can just copy or cut paste. Yeah. So you got to be careful not to triple click because usually you don't want the whole line. So it's all sorts of fun things here. Okay, so there's our start of our brackets here. So it turns out the start of one bracket is the end of another bracket, right? So the start of the 10% bracket and the end of that is the start of the 12% bracket, right? It's the same thing. I don't think I need two variable names for that, but that's okay. And then I'm just going to put the 10% in here, 0.1. I'm going to feel a little bad about that, but having another variable to say 10% and 0.1, that one feels a little silly. I don't know. And sure, that's okay. Oh, this should be a double, right? And we just repeat this a bunch of times. So 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, 37, on and on and on, and change some variable names here. 22, 24, 32, 35, and 37. And then we change our start to the end, and then we change this one to the next one. So if you're not careful, these will get you to 32, 35, 37. Now, this one we don't really know what to do here yet either. We'll get to that in a second. 22, 24, 32, 35, 37. Okay, So what is the end of that bracket? Well, there is no end. So there's a handy little shortcut here. It's int dot max value. I am almost entirely certain no one has ever claimed more than $2 billion of earned income. That is because our tax system differentiates capital gains from earned income. Earned income is stuff you get from your employer for a paycheck. Our CEOs don't make that much yet, thankfully. So no one's claiming $2 billion of earned income. Capital gains are taxed differently. So when you get a stock incentive program and say, hey, you're in charge of this company here, if the stock does well, we'll give you a bunch of stock for free. That's a capital gain that isn't earned incomes, and you pay taxes at a much lower rate on capital gains because our system is rigged. And it's not even rigged. I do. It's a little facetious here because generally with capital gains, for everyone else who's not a CEO and executive getting stock options and things like that, if you save your money that you've earned from a paycheck, you've already paid taxes on it, and you invest it in the market, you now have capital gains, right? So we technically are taxing most everyone else twice on capital gains, but the people who make the most money off capital gains don't pay taxes on it the first time, and they get a lower rate the second time, and it's just a whole thing. I have my tinfoil hat. I'm sorry, I'm a weird conspiracy theorist. Sorry. It's the system. So, all right. What is it upset about now? It is not. Okay, so this error is saying object reference is required for the non-static field method or property. I wrote a method. It's not static because we are not using the implied top-level domain or top-level statements. This here is a static main method. Right? You don't need an instance of this program to call it here. It just runs main. So main can only call other static methods unless I have an instance of a class. Like convert to int32 is a static method. I don't need an instance of an integer to convert another integer. And this is all stuff I think we talked about back in 200. So just say this is a static method here, and that should take care of my red lines. Yep, there we go. So we get our taxes at. And then we spit this all right back out. And then we add it all together and do some more arithmetic, and we've got our answers. Yeah.
We still need to change the percentages at the end of the methods.
At the end of the method. Thank you. Yes, that would be incorrect there. 24, 32. This is what happens when you copy paste. You don't pay attention and bad stuff happens. 10%, 12%, 12%, 22, 24, 32, 35, 37. Okay, got it. Oh, thanks, JSM. Hey, White Paladin, thanks for joining along. I am sorry, I was not watching chat. I was having too much fun ranting about taxes. So thanks for being there. Yep, okay. I think this will go, and then we just need to go and print out, taxes owed at 10% is in some value here, and throw in another formatter. Here's our taxes owed. At this point, you were probably bored before, but probably still bored already now. So, hey, my friend Jello, thanks for donating your Twitch Prime sub to the Scholarship Fund of the University of Michigan Dearborn College of Engineering and Computer Science. Glad to have you along. 32, 35, 37. That was one too many. So this is where having a list of objects. I guess we did a basic array. We could have done a basic array. We didn't do the fancy lists, though, did we? We talked about arrays, didn't we? Okay. I guess I could have done an array. But then I don't have nice names for things. I don't know. That's fine. You don't feel too bad, do you? 22, 24, 32, 35, 37. All right. And then total taxes owed, right? So we probably need to have a double for total taxes. Owed is just the sum of all of these things. That's a fun one here. Plus this one. And then 12 and 22 and 24 and 32 and 35 and 37. Okay, it's not the prettiest formatting here, but that worked well for my copy paste. Made that easier for me here. And then we'll have our total taxes owed. Total taxes owed. Then the arithmetic. Oh my goodness. So then we have taxes owed as percentage of gross income is just divided by gross income. Yeah, if you want it to be prettier then, right? Times 100. I like it. That'll be pretty. And then adjusted gross income So this is where you hear those stories of people who are like, hey, the CEO pays less taxes than the secretary. That's when they talk about percentage. Generally not dollar amount. I would wager that doesn't happen in terms of dollar amount, but in percentage wise, yes, you can get paid less. If your entire wage comes from capital gains, what is it, the capital gains tax rate? What is the capital gains tax rate? Only up to 20% at most of your capital gains taxes. So if your secretary is getting paid well and so ends up paying, somewhere in this range, they've got to be making a lot, I guess, pretty well paid secretary. Maybe paying a decent amount at the 24% rate here, whatever happens to be. We could get pretty close, right, with those percentages. And that's where that stuff gets interesting. So, all right, should we try it? See if it works. If it works the first time, well, I guess this is the second time because we already found one bug. But if it works this time, I'll be pretty happy. And again, if you didn't have a method for this, if you just had a bunch of if-elses, that's perfectly fine. I don't care which solution you used to solve it. There's tons of different ways you could have gone about it here. It's not one right way to do things. So W-2s, should we make a lot of money this time? We'll just do one W-2, but let's do like $1 million. Is that a lot of money? Feels like a lot of money. And let's not claim any deductions. We'll just take the standard. So that means we have $987,000 worth of taxable income. So we still pay the same 10%, regardless of that we made $1 million on our first $10,000, because this is that sliding progressive tax scale system. So all of these should be max, except for the 37% here. And just to do a quick sanity check then, right, we should take our 987,050 minus the start of that bracket, which was 539,900. Take that number, multiply it by 37%. Did we get 165,000? 165,445.5. Look at that, it matches. So we did one sanity check. I'm not going to bother checking all the ranges here because I feel like we're probably pretty close at this point. And again, it's just garbage software. We're going to throw it away. No one's actually going to use this. So yeah.
I did try and use a bunch of classes with tax brackets, but it would only calculate for one tax bracket and not continue on to the rest.
So yeah, so depending on how you do your if and else ifs, you would also then need to include. So like we could say, hey, if my income is my gross income. Oops, that's in the wrong spot here. So if we're down here, we'll just come down to the bottom here. So I could say, hey, if my gross income or adjusted gross income is greater than the start of the 37% bracket, right? If this is what I'm doing, then I also need to do all the other calculations for the rest of these ones here with the standard range. So if you only say, hey, yeah, so you have to calculate every bracket at every if, else if you're doing with if, else if, else if, else if. So that gets a little bit tedious with the typing, but we copy paste things all the time. So you probably didn't take you a lot of time. Yeah, and not too big of a deal. So we would have to do all of them in there every time. So the other approach that I commonly also use is something like we'll have a int can't type tonight taxes income to be taxed. Starts at the adjusted gross income here. And then we start with this one here. And then we can say, hey, my taxes owed at 37% is going to be my income to be taxed minus the start of the bracket times 0.37. Then what we do, we say, okay, you paid your tax on that money. The income you have to be taxed now is start of the bracket. And we just work our way down. And we don't need else ifs at all. We just work our way through going this way, each of these being the next bracket down. So if you just keep changing what we're being taxed on, that's one approach. And you don't need to have every calculation in every branch here. We just say, okay, if it didn't apply, it's 0. If it did apply, either you're in the range or over the max, whatever, right? We're just going to go with it here. That's just another approach. Perfectly fine. Either way, we'll get the job done. Might as well comment all that out. Control E, C for comment. I really need to have better things in my head than shortcuts. So questions, thoughts, concerns? This wasn't too bad. Again, hopefully just a quick intro. Just use some C# syntax, get your first C# program running. Yeah.
So you're saying basically if it's 37%, for example, your net bracket, then you owe everything cumulatively under that, correct?
Yeah, so you're going to pay 35% of everything in this range, 32% of everything in this range, 24% of everything in this range.
Including the 10%, right?
Yep.
That's under 2,000.
Yeah, so everyone, no matter how much money you make, $10 or $10 million, your first $10,000 is taxed at 10 cents on the dollar. Yep. All right, and then hopefully, if you look, like this will give you the totals here. So you could also use this to check yourself. But again, the arithmetic's not really the exercise at this point here. Okay. All right, I've been talking for a while. I want to get a Diet Coke because I'm about to fall asleep up here. Is it okay if we take a break a little bit early and then come back and do the form stuff? Okay, cool. So let me put some more music on. We'll come back in just a little bit. Yeah. Alrighty, I think that was 10 minutes. That a decent time break? 5 seems like a little short sometimes, so happy to adjust as you folks see fit. This is your class. If you just wanted to buy the book and read it, you could have done that. So totally up to you folks. Whatever we got to do, schedule-wise, it's cool. Excuse me. So I did commit and push those changes out to the course repo. So go out and refresh. You've got all the code here. Just an example. Nothing too fancy here. Generally, that's what we'll try and do when we have projects. Is after it's due, I'll go over my solution for it. Sometimes it's interesting. Some of you are bored out of your minds. I apologize. You're welcome to skip it. So that's what a lot of people say. So I'll keep doing it until the majority of people say it's a waste of time, and then maybe I'll do it at the end. I don't know, but it should be okay. So we'll continue on with forms today, and then we'll get back into object-oriented concepts after that. So this next project today will be the last one with a 1-week due date. Usually I like to give 2 weeks for projects because that gives you a little more time to get some stuff done, and we can do something slightly more interesting than just a little throwaway project. But just intro throwaway project, form throwaway project, and then we'll start using forms when we start using some of the cool things we can do in C#. So we'll do forms-based projects for these because they're much more interesting to work with than just seeing text on the screen. Okay, that's sort of the goal. And then we'll work our way into the advanced topics, finish out the book, have our midterm. I've done all the core C# stuff we need to know all the syntax, all the fun things. We can get into some cool database programming, which is amazing. I think this is some of the coolest stuff you do in programming because everything lives in a database nowadays. There are a few things that are like local file-based processes, but most everything is using a database somewhere. And that's the fun stuff. So we'll get into how we interact with databases from code. If you haven't taken the database class, it's okay. I will build it for you essentially, and you can follow along. It's not too bad here, but the code side of how do I put data in a database, how do I get data back out, how do I update, those sorts of things here is a lot of fun. And then we'll move on to the final section using the Universal Windows platform, start looking at how we build our game. Generally, we'll group into teams of 4. I like 4. 3s are good too. 4 is okay. 5 is, there's just not enough work for 5 people to do. I mean, 4 is a bit of a stretch, but that's okay. We've got a lot of people, so we'll figure out what game you want to build. It's totally up to you folks. Generally, I say pick an Atari game, a nice little easy 2D game, and clone it. The demo I do of Pong is off limits because I'm showing you how to do Pong. So you're not going to build your own Pong, but we've had all sorts of other interesting projects people have done. I tried to get it up and running last week. I haven't had a chance to come back to that, but at some point I'll be able to demo not last semester's, the last time I taught this class a couple years ago, some of their projects. We had some fun ones, so I can show you just to have an idea for what we can do, and we'll actually get them running on the Universal Windows platform so that we can run them on the Xboxes in the game lab. And that's the goal when we do our group project presentations on our time slot for final exams. We might not be able to use the lab because it's not rated for 45 people, but we might show up somewhere that has Xboxes and play our games on the Xbox. That's a little TBD, but we'll make it work. Should be a lot of fun. So it'll need you to spend at least 1 session in the lab making sure it works. The cool thing, because it's the Universal Windows platform, is it will work on my PC and the Xbox. It works on both. the setup is ever so slightly different because unless you're plugging in the controller to your PC, you're probably dealing with keyboard input, and we're using the Xbox, you're dealing with controller input because we're probably not going to plug a keyboard into the Xbox. You could, but let's just not. We'll use the controller because it's more fun. Is that a question?
I was gonna, so like, is everything we're doing slash no Leo to that final project, everything we learned, do with this combo?
So databases have nothing to do with our final project. They could, but the way that we would interact with data is not generally the same way. If you're dealing with like online games and things, you're going to be dealing with online web services for storing data. That those web services would talk to a database. You're probably not keeping a small little SQL Server compact database for your games. Maybe people do. I'm not actually a game developer, so I don't know what those fine folks who write really interesting games do. They just like C#. And Dr. Maxim thought it was really cool if we can get games running on Xbox. And I said, okay, because he's a really nice guy and I like him. Okay, cool. All right, forms. So we're going to look at 3 different types today. Again, the Windows form is the basic, quick, easy one that works on Windows. It's worked basically forever. It's probably what you'll end up seeing here if you go and work on C# applications out in the industry, because these are a quick little visual way for me to build applications that people can point and click with, which are most of our applications here. So there are 2 different flavors, like the other things. The .NET framework is the older one. The Forms app without .NET framework runs on Core. That's the newer one. For our purposes, it'll do the same thing. It doesn't matter. We're just going to use the newer one because it makes us happy and we feel like we're leading edge, and that makes us smile. So it'll be a basic Forms app. I'm going to put it in the same course repo. This will be week 2. This is Windows Form program. Again, pick .NET 6, .NET 7. You're perfectly fine. Shouldn't matter one way or the other here. And then what we get now is a design view. And this is like my favorite thing in Visual Studio. This is, believe it or not, faster than the other one. As long as that took to load. But what you get is a visual view of what your program will look like when it runs. So I get a box that says Form 1, and if I hit run, I will get a box that says Form 1. And I can drag the box around, I can shrink it, I can use my different window controls. These things come out of box. This is what it is. Now, there's nothing I can do with it, though, because I haven't put anything here. But this is the shell. So just by starting that Forms app, I get the shell of a window here that I can start doing fun stuff with. So I'm going to close that back out. We put Solution Explorer back. And then what we're going to use is this Toolbox tab. It's probably over here on your left. I try never to move things away from default locations because default locations are just easiest for most everything. I work with some folks who have customized their entire layout everywhere. And they like it now because Visual Studio will sync it if you log in. It will sync your settings so they can go log into another computer, or every time they get a new laptop, it syncs for them. That's great. They like their layout. I'm just going to go with defaults because, again, I'm lazy. Right? Let's just make it easy. So in the toolbox, you get all sorts of things that you can interact with. We're going to start with some basic ones. So a button is our nice and easy one. I'm sorry this font is a little small. The zoom doesn't work well with the menu stuff. So apologies if it's a little small up there. Hopefully it'll look a little better on the recording because I think it's 1080p. I think that was my settings for streaming. I forget. It's been a while. I set it up once and haven't had to touch it. But you grab a control and you drag and drop it to where you want it to go on your screen. So on a button, I say, where do I want the button to go? I pick somewhere. I'll just put it in the middle of the screen. Now I have a button. So if I run my program, now there's a button here. I can click the button. It doesn't do anything yet, but I have a button I can click, which is exciting. So we are 10 times more advanced now than our console-based applications already. And all we have to do is drag and drop something. So now what do we do with all these things? So we need this properties window that's over here. And usually I have it pinned. I think I shrunk both of those so you could see when I was side by side. So generally properties kind of lives underneath Solution Explorer. You're welcome to move it anywhere you want, but properties is all of the things about this button, all the properties of the button. If I click off a button, it's now properties of Form 1. If I click my button, it's properties of button 1. Right, so the thing that you've clicked on is what you're seeing the properties for. So there are all sorts of properties here. We are not going to use most of them. When you build actual applications, you can use as many of them as you want. You can go nuts, make these things look really pretty. I think I admitted to you folks before, I'm not great at the whole user experience sort of thing. That is not a particular skill set of mine. I don't do pretty. I am all about function, and that's okay. I will stick in my lane. And at some point, if I had more time and more lives and not busy life outside of this, I would go and study human computer interaction because it's fascinating, but I know nothing about it, so I won't even pretend. So my programs will look ugly. Yours don't have to, but ugly's okay. So for the properties here, the text property sets what text shows on the button. So if we wanted to say something else, we can say, hey, say click me. Now it doesn't update right away. So like as I start typing stuff, until I click off of that, it doesn't update. So it's a little bit annoying there. It does not like a live update. So it's here. And then right now you only see click because it's not big enough. So I can like make it a little bigger here, where I can come back and edit and take that back out. And sure. Now we have our click me button.
Can you just hit enter and that would update it?
Yeah, enter is good too. I usually have my hand on the mouse when I'm doing this design view stuff. So like the enter key is, like I have to pick my hand off my mouse, and it's just habits of mine. But yeah, definitely enter is a good key there. The other important thing we need here is we need to know what this is going to be called in our code here. Because right now we just have text here, but in the code portion of our program we haven't seen yet, I don't know what this button is. I don't know how to reference it. So that one's actually up at the top. It's under name, which is not sorted alphabetically, because this is like the most important property. This is what the name of this code is, the name of this button is inside the code. So right now it's called button 1. Every time you drag a button in, it becomes the next number. So if I had 10 buttons, I'd have button 1, button 2, button 3. As you can imagine, those are terrible names, right? We don't want button 1, button 2, button, because who knows what those buttons do. So we're going to change the name. This is now the click me button. Some people are really big fans of putting the word or type of component in the name. I tend to be a fan of that because I get confused easily. I just can't keep enough things in my head. So if I have a button, it'll be something something button. Because that way when I'm looking at it in the code, it will say something something button, and I'll know it's a button. Not that it's that hard to go find out what type it is. You just have to hover your mouse over it. But just a naming convention. It's not a hard and fast rule or anything. You're welcome to call it Apple. No one cares. You can call it Cookie. Right? They're just variable names. So what we'll see here now is this is the form CIS design. I don't know if you noticed that in the tab here. This is the design view. You can also get to the code view here if I double click on the form1.design.cs. And you'll see now I have a private button called Click Me button. And there's this whole section here that says Windows Form Designer generated code. You generally don't want to touch this generated code because when you dragged and dropped stuff, it put code here. If you change the code inside this little section here, the stuff in the designer probably won't work anymore, right? Like it writes it for you. So you could go write all this code by hand if you wanted. And there are ways to programmatically create user interfaces, and those sorts of things are useful when we're doing dynamic sort of interfaces. And based on some value that you enter, you now have 7 different choices instead of 3. You probably don't want to have to drag 7 buttons in and manually turn them on and off. You can add code in. So this is code that happens behind the scenes for us because the designer knows how to write code. It's just a shortcut. So you're welcome to do all this by hand. I just would not want to do that by hand. So, but other more advanced applications, you have to do some of this coding visual stuff by hand because you want it to show up or not show up or turn on or turn off or add certain things. And it's all customizable, which is fun. So what you'll see now, I have a click me button is the type of button. It's a private attribute in the class of form1. It also has this partial keyword. Don't worry too much about that. We'll get to that later on what that actually means. But you can have classes defined in multiple files, which gets interesting. So sets a new button, right? Initializes it, makes a new instance of it, and then sets all the properties. So these are all the properties that got set for the button here. We only set the name and the text. The other stuff was like defaults. But if you wanted to go change it, go for it. Notice this location here. This is like the pixel location. When we look at pixels, 0, 0 is the top left. We're not math land. There's no origin here. 0, 0 is top left. It's a little confusing for a while if you like math. But once you've done enough math and you don't have to do math anymore, you get used to 0, 0 being the top left. And life is good again. So I can manually change the pixels here if I wanted. Like, hey, I want to put this at 360 and 175, and that'll be okay. It'll go and move the button here. Like if I change this dramatically, like 160, I come back, now it's, right, it moved it to 160 pixels from the left. So you can change the code there. Just that's like the danger zone. Just be careful. And it's probably easier just in design view to go change the location. Just drag it around is probably easier, but it's somewhere in the properties here. There's like so many properties. Anyway, so we have our button. We can click on it. It doesn't do a whole lot. This is all about the form itself, right? Our form, because it's a partial program, it is a form. It has all this other stuff. So this dot comes from the form, and you can set properties. You can have drawing sizes. You can auto scale, do all sorts of other fun things here. But what gets added here is the button to this list of controls. So controls is a collection of controls, things that you click on, things that you interact with. So anytime we drag and drop something into the form, it'll show up in this list. And the designer code will add it for us, right? It works out pretty well. So don't need the code here for now. Now the next thing we need is somewhere to show some text. So we could change what's shown on the button. You're welcome to do that. Usually that freaks people out when buttons change their text. I don't know why, but that's just not a common convention. So usually you have some sort of text on the screen. So for text, you can use a text box, but a text box generally is something that the user types into. So if you just want to show text, we're going to use label. It'll take a little while getting used to that, and then we don't actually use labels back when we get to XAML anyway. But for Windows Forms, most of these things are labels. It's just text. It's just another word for it here. So I'll drag label onto the screen, and now I have the label properties over here in the bottom right. Again, I have the text of what it shows here. So I don't actually want it to say anything right now, so I'm just going to take the text out. Now it's empty, and I need to give it a name. I don't want label 1. Label 1's a bad name for it here, so we'll just say label. We only have label 1 was probably fine, but if we had 15 different labels, we would give them proper names. This is just our very first one here. Okay, so now I have a label and I have a button. So if I go back and look at my code, right, I have a label, I have a button, but nothing happens yet. When we're dealing with graphical user interface programs, the paradigm is very different from what we've done with our console-based applications. We don't show some text and sit and wait for input, for someone to type something and hit enter. We show a form, and then the user can do whatever they want. We don't know what the user is going to do, but if they click this button, I need to do something. So what we're doing is we're responding to events, and the events are the user interacting with the controls on the form here. So I need to add what's known as an event handler. What happens? How do I handle the event of being clicked on? So if I click on my button and I come over to this properties section here, right now I'm in the properties list. There's also this events little lightning bolt here. These are all the different events that can happen with this button here. Most of these we could care less about. Actually, 99% of these we could care less about because we don't need any of these extra fancy things here. But like when your mouse goes down on the button, you could do something different than when the mouse is released. Sure. Okay. I don't know, like if hold the button down and we'll like increase a slider or something. I don't know. You can do all sorts of crazy things with it, but we don't care about most of these. So the quick and easy one is when it's clicked. So there's a click handler here. And again, I'm lazy. I don't like having to click this menu and coming over here and typing stuff. So what I do in the designer view, if you double click your button, it will generate it for you. And now you'd notice it took me to the form code here. This is my form.cs. This is not the form designer CS. This is the other partial class file here. So now this is the code that essentially runs. This is where all my event handlers go. This is the design view. This runs to set up the form, but I don't put code in here. I try not to code in the design view. My code will generally go in the form.cs file. It gets weird because there's multiple files for the same thing. There's a design one, there's the designer code, and then there's the actual code. We'll get used to it. It's not too bad. So this is the click me button underscore click. So the name of the control and then the event that's being handled. This is our convention for naming these things. When I double click, I get the convention name. I could call this anything I want, right? This could be cookie. I'm hungry, by the way. So this is cookie. So if we call it cookie and I come back over to my design view, oh, I lost it. It broke. This is why changing these things is risky. So where's my button? Click. I need to change that to cookie. So you can manually say, hey, this is the method I want you to run here when you click the button. And it should be okay. Did we get it here? Did I break it? I probably broke it. Oh yeah, we got build errors. Yeah, so when I changed the name here, it upset the code that was generated here in the design view. And this is, I gave you bad examples, I'm sorry. So if you wanted to go fix it, we just say, hey, I want this.cookie now. Right? This is the name of the method that we're writing here. Again, this is a whole lot of work, so we just don't do that. Don't bother renaming these things. Yes, do change. Let's put it all back here. Okay, I think we're back here. No, not cookie. Click me button. Click. We're probably back to working here. Let's see. No build errors. Okay. So nothing happens yet. So it's calling this method, but we didn't tell it to do anything yet, right? So now we need to put some code in here. So to interact with the label, I'd say label, right? Label is a property, an attribute of my class form1. Notice I don't see it here because we split it off to this design view, which is a little bit awkward. So you kind of have to know the names of your things or go back and come look in this file here to say what all your properties are, or go look at your design view. You also have the properties where it says what you're looking at is a drop-down menu of all of the controls in there. So if you lose your label, because like it's over here and you can't see the text on it and you don't know how to go find it, you can just click in here and say, hey, I want the label to get back to its properties. So sometimes people don't like taking the text away because then you can't see it. That's fine. That's perfectly valid, and you can go and just leave some text there. Is there a question?
Well, I was just curious about something. So I noticed that on the code, this thing called event, like ARG as a event arm.
Yes.
Is that just, what does that do there? Does that just like kind of keep all the information for the actual actions?
Yes, so when the event happens, there's all sorts of cool stuff you can see about that event. So if you just do e dot, okay, it's not giving us very much. Usually we can get some more information here. Maybe not for buttons. This might be for something else, but you can get something about the event that's been fired. You can add more additional arguments. We're not using it for right now. The sender is a little bit more interesting because this is, we haven't gotten to it yet. It's an object. Everything is an object in C# because of inheritance. So the sender is actually technically the button itself. So you can say like, hey, if my sender is equal to my button. So this one is just which control triggered it. So you can do something. The event args would have additional information if we went through and added it. Yeah, we're not going to for now. There's ways to do it. I think we get into it for the XAML stuff. I'm trying to remember right now. But so if you wanted to have one method handle multiple button clicks, we could share this click me button event handler and just say, hey, okay, if the sender was actually this button, or the sender was this button, or the sender was this button, do different things. Totally just a style preference, however you want to go about that. So generally, we'll just do one handler per button because that's easy. And I'm all about easy, but either way is perfectly fine. So anyway, with label, we say label dot. Right? Label is my attribute. That label we added, we dragged in there. Now dot, and I get all the cool things about it here. These are all the different properties you can create. You can trigger events. You can do all sorts of fun things here. We're not going to get into most of these here, but basically we just want to set the text. Say, hey, the text is equal to hello world. Right, so when I click the button, we'll change the text here to hello world. We'll change the value of it. It was blank, now it's hello world. Now when I run it, I click me, uh-oh. It's not doing it, we broke it. The label's there, right? I mean, I probably broke the handler. I think I broke the handler. Yeah, I broke, okay. This is what I get for screwing around with this code here. This is not, yeah, there's no, okay, there's no event handler. Generally not. Yeah, this was a bad example here. Why? Yeah, I thought, okay, there's my button. Go back, double click it. I don't want one. Oh, don't give me one. Undo, click me. We'll do it the hard way. Come back here to click and say, please run this method. Okay. There's like 3 ways to do everything, like you've probably seen with all of your tools. So if the easy way doesn't work, you can always do it the hard way. Now, hopefully that'll actually run. Let's see. Yay, hello world. Okay, I'm not too embarrassed now. It worked. So how many minutes was that to get a hello world example going? I spent a lot of time talking. You folks are very kind to sit and listen to me ramble. 20 minutes to get hello world. Okay, that's okay. We're doing all right. Not too bad. And just for interesting noticing here, the process memory, how much memory is being used by my form here? About 17 meg. Not small, but when you look at the other things, this is small compared to some of the XAML stuff and the MAUI stuff. 17 meg in a modern computer is minuscule, but you know, there's some cost to doing this because everything is already loaded up and running. You know, it does all the things forms do, so it interacts with everything else. But we've got that. All right, so we did our click me button. Hooray! That was our hello world. We'll come back to forms in a little bit. I want to show you the other versions. It will take less than 20 minutes. I promise. I think I can promise that. Okay, so I'll just leave this here. We'll do a new project. So this time, let's do the Universal Windows Platform app, or XAML. So the XAML blank app, Universal Windows, no, my goodness. Yeah, blank app, okay. There's so many of these, I get confused very easily. So and it kind of like gives you some hints here. Hey, this will run on Xbox, it'll run on UWP, it'll run on desktop, on Windows desktops, these sort of things. Like they try and give these tags now because you have so many different projects here in your list. Like if you don't filter these things, like, and I don't even have all the workloads installed. Like if you install more workloads from Visual Studio, you get more things. So we'll go back to XAML, pick our blank app Universal Windows Platform, and we'll call this one our week 2 XAML form. XAML form, sure. We'll say form. In the course repo, so it's there. Make a new solution. We're great. We'll make it up and running. Now with the Universal Windows Platform, it's a little bit different. It's not using .NET Core. It's using these versions of the Windows platform. So you can target versions and you can have minimum required versions. So depending on what you pick here, it will either work on that version of Windows or not, or that version of whatever latest update for Xbox, that sort of thing. Thankfully, most Windows computers auto-update now. They learned that was a really bad thing to let people skip. And this is why we have botnets running Windows XP still out there, which is 21 years old now, right, for XP? Wow, I'm an old person. So auto-updates are good. Usually people will be up to date. If you're actually developing this for the real world, pick as far back as you can is generally easier. But like every major release gets a couple new bells and whistles. And you're like, if I really want those bells and whistles, go for it. Say, hey, you must be at Windows 11. Screw you, Windows 10 users. Probably don't, but you could. Right? It's totally up to you. Pick whatever you want here. I just take the defaults because, again, it's just a throwaway project. Just an example here. We get a bunch of stuff here. Now, they're pretty cool. They've got like all sorts of, hey, here's some tutorial links you can follow. Here's some things. Here's how you can package and deploy. And like, they want people to publish stuff to their Microsoft store. They want to increase the usage of that ecosystem, which is actually kind of cool. I'm not opposed to the Windows Store. I think for a lot of things, it's a great model. Not everything, but a lot of things, it's a great model there. And then, of course, how do you monetize your app? Yeah, let's add some ads because everyone hates ads. But sure. So we get a bunch of different things here. The main place we're going to start here is our main page.xaml, XAML. Pretty sure I've been pronouncing it XAML, or I've just been doing it wrong and no one's ever corrected me. So go to our main page. Now this will look sort of familiar. We get a design view, and then we also now get the XAML view. So XAML is just, there's an extra A here for something. XML, I think it's extensible application markup language. Let's Google that. What does XAML mean? Yes, got it right. Again, why these things are in my head, I don't know. It's sad. You should have hobbies. Do interesting stuff. Do fun things. So what happens is the design view here matches the XAML here. So as stuff changes in design view, it's literally translated into XML or XAML here. So as I drag and drop stuff from the toolbox in, like, hey, now I want a button here, it now adds a button, and you can see all the XML stuff here. You still get the properties window over here. It looks a little different. They changed the format and said, hey, we should group these things together. So here's the brush category of things. Here's your appearance, and it's nice. So this is the like later version of forms. This one's a little bit nicer to work with here. It's a lot of work to translate one to the other. So organizations that have forms aren't, paying developers hundreds of dollars an hour to go and convert stuff. Maybe hundreds is a bit of a stretch, I'm sorry, but by the time you like add in all the fees, developers are expensive. So companies like money, but you kind of need money to not go out of business. So it makes sense that you're not going to pay people to do things that you don't get any value out of. Right? If your form still works and you're getting value out of this form because it does a business process for you, I don't know, your business uses it, you're going to keep using it because it's going to keep making you money. And this is why we run into things like Southwest had. It was Southwest, the garbage airline who canceled on everyone. where their systems haven't been updated in 20 years because it's expensive to replace them, and they just couldn't handle it. And all their developer team are like, we need to invest in updating our system. They're like, no, it works. It's okay. It's no biggie. It's still working. And this is why you can go search for COBOL developer jobs. COBOL has been a programming language that people have said has been dead since I was in school, yet it still runs, like our state unemployment system runs COBOL, some banks still run COBOL systems because it's expensive to replace software. So you can actually make a lot of money if you go learn COBOL and go work on these really old antiquated systems because they need people to maintain them. That's just a fun fact. Anyway, so there's some fun things. Look, COBOL developer on Indeed.com. You have mainframe system program for A-line staffing solutions in Grand Rapids. 93 to 118K a year as a COBOL developer. Not too shabby, right? It's not shabby. Not shabby at all. Not West Coast money, but again, the cost of living in Grand Rapids is nowhere near what it is in the Bay Area. So, you can actually get an apartment for less than $4,000 a month, that sort of thing. Just blows my mind it costs that much to live somewhere. That's okay. That's another story. XAML, I promised you less than 20 minutes. You got to keep me on track here. I'm sorry. So toolbox, again, we don't have label. We had label, now we don't have label. Now we're back to text box, again, is a box that you'd expect to type into. So text block is probably where we're going to put some text. Okay. So, and the zoom on this is really funny. You can pick different scaled displays. They still have phone here, which is weird. They haven't killed that by now, but you can say, hey, I want to target it to look really nice on this given size display or whatever. So the default here is the Surface Book one, which is like the high def display. It gets real small here. I don't really change that often, but the control mouse wheel will zoom for you so you can actually see some of this stuff if you want to go with that approach. You're welcome to change these as well. It doesn't really matter which one you target. It should still show. If you pick one that's too big, you'll have trouble like viewing it on your screen. But that's about the only issue you'll have. So then we have our button. Now we need to change the name of the button. Again, this is my click me button. Here we have a name for it. We have our text block here. This is my text block. Sure, again, you come up with something interesting name here. And then I don't want it to have any text here. So I'm going to take that text out. And we're going to blank that one. And the button, I want to change the text. Now this is content, not text. I don't know why they changed their names here, but it's okay. We'll just get used to it here. We'll say this one is click me here. And we do the same thing. I can come here. I can go to the events here with the little lightning bolt, or I can just double click it. Double clicking is my favorite because, again, it's easy. Assuming you don't change anything else in the design view, because that will just bite you. We'll say, hey, my text block. Now, you do want to be careful. Because I named it text block, there's also the capital T text block class. I can't change the class itself. I need to change my instance, my text block here. So maybe use better names. But again, we'll say, hey, text is equal to hello world. Great, and then we'll give it a run. This one takes a little longer to get running, right? There's a little more stuff happening behind the scenes. It's a little sad, but that's okay. It's not too bad. And notice our process memory, we're about 61 meg or so just for running our XAML app versus what we're at, like 16, 17. So significantly more, but again, on a computer with multiple gigs of memory, we don't care. No one's going to shoot us for using 60 meg. I say click me, and then we get hello world. All right, this was 10 minutes or so, right? Okay, not too bad. We're improving. If we can have our time again, we'll get the next one done in 5 minutes. Is that okay? So that's the XAML thing. The fun stuff here, oh, there, okay, it's like zoomed out really weird, is drag and drop your stuff. It will show here. You can actually turn off this view. You can hide this one. It's got different, I never remember which is the right button for it here, but if you want just the design view, or you can like flip them around, it's just design. Yeah, if you double click it, it will hide the other one. So you don't have to have it open. If you've been working long enough with XAML, like sometimes it's faster to just come in here and change some of these than it is to go find the right property here. It's all just style preferences, right? It doesn't matter one way or the other, whichever approach you like here. Perfectly fine, we'll get the job done for you. All right, so one more new project. Now this is for Maui, the cross-platform stuff supposed to work on mobile and Apple. Not quite perfect yet, has some issues, but it's like super under active development here. And they're like Maui developers on Twitter respond to people, which is super interesting. They're like, hey, I have an issue or a problem or a question. Like the actual people on the dev team are like, oh, hey, thanks for asking us about our project. I'm glad you're interested in it. Please like us. I don't know. It's cool though. So if I search Maui, I'll get a .NET MAUI app. Notice this can run on Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, Mac OS, MAUI, Tizen. I don't actually know what Tizen is. I really should know that, but that's okay. And Windows. So this is our week 2 MAUI. And again, this is based on Core, .NET Core. There's additional stuff that happens behind the scenes to get the native views working on the different devices. So it does some sort of translation between my C# code and what does it look like for a native iOS app or a native Android app, and those sorts of fun things here. So I'll make my project. Now this one, because it's new and has all sorts of other fun stuff here, it's like, hey, are you new to .NET MAUI? Click here to learn more. Yes, please. And they're like, hey, here's how you do some stuff. Not a bad tutorial, not actually a lot here, but that's okay. So if you follow the Android one, then it will show you how you can go and download your virtual device. So you need to get an Android emulator. We'll go and download the Android emulator. You can pick which Android version you want to use. So download the SDK, do all these fun things. It says, hey, use the Pixel 5. And I said, sure, I'll use the Pixel 5. I don't care. You can make it work on your device if you actually plug it in. There's some ways to do that. You have to put your phone in developer mode and things, but you could run your MAUI apps on your Android device if you want. I think you can do it with iOS. I'm not an Apple person. I haven't actually tried because it's expensive to have the Apple stuff, and I don't have that stuff. So I'm not going to go buy it just to play with it. But so I imagine you could do probably similar things. We'll see. But our MAUI app now, with MAUI, you don't get the design view. All you get is the XAML view, which is a little sad. So you have to start adding stuff now in XAML. You don't get the drag and drop. It's not the end of the world. It's not too terrible to do, to put stuff around. And if you build it over in a regular XAML app, you can somewhat translate stuff pretty quickly with some drag and drop, but your mileage might vary here. But the out-of-box example here now, if I want to run on my Windows machine, here I can just hit run, and it will go and build the project. Now, it does take quite a while the first time. After you've done it once, it keeps a lot of stuff loaded and ready to go for you. It shouldn't be quite so slow. Notice we're at 80, 120, 160, 168 meg of memory usage here. And we get our hello world, click me. You've clicked the button one time. They changed the text of the button, which freaks me out. I don't know why it freaks me out, but like as you click the button, the text changes. And you can just click this button till you're bored here. But now I have a Windows desktop version of this application. If I want to run it on Android, I pick my little drop down here, say, hey, I don't want it to run on Windows. I want it to run on my framework .NET 7 on my Android device. And this is doing these other things. I think you have to get their hardware kit, or actually you can run Visual Studio for Mac on a Mac. These options probably work. Again, I'm sorry, your mileage might vary. I'm not a Mac person, but I'm going to pick Android. It says, oh, okay, I already went through the steps. So it knows, hey, you have this Pixel 5 emulator set up. I hit run, and it will go and launch my Pixel 5 emulator. Thankfully, this was quicker. It's slow if it's turned off initially, and then it's still building behind the scenes. So it comes up and like, you've got an Android emulator here, and you're like, what's happening? It's working on it. Just take a deep breath, grab some coffee, grab your Coke, just give it a minute. We'll get there. So 5 minutes or less for this one, right? I think we're still on track to get it running here. We'll give it a minute. So it looks like Visual Studio is doing nothing, and I don't actually know what it's doing behind the scenes. While it looks like it does nothing, but it's doing something. We just got to give it some time. JSN noticed if I put a smaller number in on the tax estimator, I could get negative taxes. That sounds bad. You technically does happen with our tax policy. There are tax credits where you can get money back from the feds for not having paid any taxes. Those are known as refundable credits, which are different than regular tax credits, which just means I don't pay taxes on certain things. So when you go buy an electric car and they say, hey, you can get a $7,500 tax credit on certain cars, that is a non-refundable credit. So if you don't owe $7,000 in taxes as a student who probably doesn't make very much money, you're not going to get $7,000 from the feds. They're just going to say, oh, okay, you don't owe us $7,000. You say, well, I didn't owe you $7,000. And they say, okay, thanks. Like, so that's the reason I didn't buy a Tesla. They seriously offended my sensibilities when they advertised the price of the Tesla discounted by the tax credit. And this was 2 or 3 years ago when they could still get it. I forget when it was when I got my electric car. And I thought that was very deceptive and misleading and very unfair. And they also then included an estimated gas savings in the sticker price of the car. I'm like, that's bullshit. You can't say the car cost me $35,000 because I didn't pay $3,000 in gas over a year. Like the bank doesn't say, oh sure, we'll just give you $3,000 because you don't buy gas. Like it doesn't work like that, and that upset me. Hey, it loaded. Look at that. That's exciting. So now here's our app. It looks pretty similar. I can click me, and the button changes. Hello world on Android using C#. Thank you for saying wow. Thank you. I thought it was wow the first time I saw it. I thought it was kind of neat. So I'll shut the emulator down. Everything will stop eventually. Not responding. Imager meme. And you're like, we're supposed to join them. The imager doesn't respond. I like that one. That one pleases me.
That one for a while. It's really annoying.
Yeah. Not responding is no fun. Okay. So this is the extent that we're going to do Maui. It's cool. It's new. Very fun. Look, you even have an image descriptor. How cool is this? Like, this is actually really neat. So Microsoft has been working hard on accessibility because it turns out most of us don't care, but for people who need accessibility, it is a deal breaker. So like, if we just ignore it, we're screwing a portion of the population. So I'm glad they're working on some accessible things. I'm more aware of it now that it affects my family, but you know, as many things, you don't know about the things you don't know. So, but yeah, so you can do it in here. It's perfectly fine. Interesting stuff, and we'll go from there. So, I guess I'll throw it out there. If anyone wants to build a game on Maui instead of Xbox, that's cool too. Right? If you'd rather do a mobile-focused thing, I'm totally open to that. Because why not? That sounds like fun. But Xbox is also fun. So, you know, just keep that as an option, I guess, if you're interested. All right, so let me go back to, let's go back to the main forms program first. I think that's probably the easier one. So this is our XAML one. We don't need that one. Do I still have the form one? I do. Nope. No solution. There it is. So our Windows form program. So this is the one we'll come back to. It's the quickest, the lightest weight, right? Just works just on Windows. We don't need to worry about all the other bells and whistles for compatibility stuff. I want to show a couple other things here from the toolbox, how we interact with them, and then we'll call it a day, and you can rebuild the tax calculator with a form. Does that sound okay? So to do that, you probably need a text box. Probably need to be in design view. There we go. There we go. Okay, so to get text from the user, now we use the text box. Here, this is the box people can type into. It doesn't come with text in it. So a lot of times what we'll do is I'll take a label and I'll put it next to my text box, and I'll put something in here like, please enter your name. And again, lining these things up is a little tedious here, but you can, it gives you these like tiny lines. I don't know how well you can see those that like give you hints for, hey, I'm aligning at the bottom, I'm aligning at the top, these sorts of things. So you can kind of drag them around and go. So the label here, it just is literally a label. I'm never going to change it, so I don't bother naming it. So this is label 1, label 2, label 3. That's perfectly fine. I don't care what these are named because I'm never going to talk to this label in code, right? Where like the label down here, I in code will say, hey, label, please change the text you're showing, right? Because we want to change what's displayed here. So if you're going to interact with it in code, give it a name. Otherwise, default names are fine. So for our text box here, we'll come back and say, hey, this is my, how about name text box? Again, I'm going to put a name in here, and it's a text box object, so that way I know what it is. And then I'll just, you can do event handling on text boxes. It's often a lot of work. So generally, the text box just lets you type into it and nothing happens until you go and click a button or hit enter. So sometimes people will do event handling for, hey, was the enter key pressed? That's fine. That's a little trickier and a little harder. Is it okay if we skip that? All right, so I'm just going to go back to the button and say, okay, instead of saying hello world, we will say hello, and we'll get the text box, name text box, name text box dot text. So whatever thing they typed in here, whatever the text is inside of that text box, we'll take and jam into the label that says hello, right? So now I can just click and I get hello, and it's empty. But if I enter my name here, Eric, I get hello, Eric. You know, like put some text in here. A text box like new lines in here, and then it just kind of scrolls as I go. So they're a little awkward sometimes. It's okay. So if the user's entering, hey, I have $10 billion in income, it probably won't fit in your text box. Screw them. No one actually has $10 billion in income of taxable income through W-2s. I misspoke. Sorry. Three people have tens of billions of income, I think, in the United States. I think we can name those three, but sure. All right. So we have a text box. So I can type stuff in here and do something with it. So if I wanted to say, what do we want? We want to like start adding some value. So if I need a place to store values here, I can declare variables inside this method. You're familiar with this idea of scope. If the variable exists in the method, it's scoped to the method. You can't get it anywhere else. If you only have one event handler, that's okay. But if I have two different event handlers, like if I'm dealing with income and I'm dealing with deductions and I'm dealing with other things, I might want some class level variables here. So I just come to my class and I say, hey, I want a private int for gross income. Great. Now, you can set values here outside of a constructor. I don't recommend it. This is generally bad form, bad practice. It essentially does the same thing, so I don't really care too much or another if you do it or not, but you want to do these sorts of things in the constructor. Remember, a constructor's job is to give values to your attributes. It constructs the object. The constructor is where we should set these values. So in here, I should say gross income is 0 to start, right? Essentially does the exact same thing, but just convention-wise, right, and being consistent, put it in the constructor. Right? Same idea then for a private int for total deductions. I'm doing the wrong. I shouldn't be doing this example for you here, but that's okay. We'll say it starts at 0. Sure. Now when I click the button, now I don't want name here, right? Well, we could have name somewhere, or maybe we have please enter a W-2 income, total income or something. And then now, instead of this label text, maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the gross income and I'm going to add to it the convert.toInt32 from the, I still call it name text box. See, if you use my example, you're going to have terrible names. You should just build it yourself. I promise. Take the text to that and add it here. Then we'll go set the label. Set text is equal to little formatted string, right? Gross income is my gross income. Now the problem is I still have text in that box. So if I want to get rid of the text in the box, hey, thanks for following along. I'm going to take my name text box. I'm going to change the value of the text. So I've used it here. Now I'll set it back to blank. Technically blank, some people consider this bad form. I don't know why. The proper way is string.empty. Someone explained it once to me and I have no idea why. So same as just quote. It's a string that's empty. Apparently it's different in different operating systems or something like that. It doesn't matter. So either one's fine, but I don't want to give you like too many bad examples because then I feel bad about myself. So this is the right thing to do. Okay, I told you, we're fine.
You also put that in null.
Yeah, you don't want null. Nulls are bad. Nulls crash programs. Right? Nulls are dangerous because the next time I go use it, if it's null and I try and parse it, it's going to crash. So like empty is better than null. Oops, I didn't move my text box over enough. Let's slide the label over or something. Come on, wake up. There it goes. There. So I'll enter some W-2 income here. We had like 15,000. Sure. Click me. Gross income 25,000. Click me. Hey, look, it's adding up. Right? We have a class level variable where this information is stored. If I only stored that information inside the function here, then I can put it in the label, but to get it back out of the label to then add to it, I have to go take the string that is the label and I have to convert or like split it into pieces and do substrings. And yeah, thank you. That's a terrible face. Yeah, this is ugly. We don't want to do that. So we'll use class level variables. I miss seeing people. I do. I'm a people person, so I enjoy you folks being here. It's really lonely sitting in my basement talking to my computer, recording videos. It's more comfortable for sure because it's my house and I can wear my pajamas and you only see like from here up. But I do miss people. I did complete the COVID challenge where I did an interview wearing like nice shirt and tie and then pajama pants. I was so happy. Like I was super thrilled to have done that. I thought that was you had to check the boxes to keep yourself sane during COVID. So that was fun. All right. So have some text boxes they can type in, have places to store the values here, right? Class level variables. This is where we can store these values. So I can use them anywhere else. So if I have other buttons, right, here's my income, maybe I can have another text box here. And again, I've told you things are ugly and that's okay. I'm not trying to make it as pretty at all. I'm actually kind of amused by trying to make it ugly right now, but that's okay. We'll say this is enter some deductions. Right, we can have something over here, and then this could be a deduction box, deduction text box, and then maybe we have another label, right? Because we should show something to the user somewhere. So I'll take another label here, and then we'll say this is my deductions label here. Again, probably not the same click me button because that's kind of confusing because they don't know which one you're going to do here. So maybe I'll add another button then. So I'll have a button over here for this is my deduction button. And then maybe our text of it here will say deduct me. Sure. And I double click that to get the new handler written. And this is the easy way. Now I have a new method that was generated for me, ready to go here, and I can do whatever XYZ I want to do inside when this button is clicked, which is different from when this button is clicked, right? So that sort of thing. And now we have a terrible looking form. I can click some buttons and things happen. Uh-oh, we crashed it here. My convert failed. Input string quote was not in the correct format. I cannot convert it to int32. I didn't give it a number. We crashed. Life is sad. So again, it's okay. We haven't got to the exception handling stuff yet. It works basically the same way as it does in C++. I think you got to exception handling in 200. You should have. Okay. Works the same way. So, but we'll breeze over that when we get to that chapter. It's not all that important right now, as long as you don't feel too bad about it. So, and you folks are welcome to jump ahead. You don't have to stick to the super basic stuff. You're welcome to use any of the cool features if you read ahead in the book, because I would love to hear your feedback too on the book. I'm fond of his book. It's relatively cheap, and I like his format of it being like a self-paced adventure because I'm a giant nerd and I like those sorts of things. And you like check your boxes off and be like, I got experience. It entertains me, and I sure. So that's what it is. Questions, thoughts, concerns? You okay so far? So the one last thing I want to throw at you here, because we can do something a little bit like this was like 15 minutes worth of work at this point. So let's do one more fun thing here. From our toolbox, you can have additional things like radio buttons. Radio buttons. Do you guys know what a radio is? Okay, I don't know. Is that a fair question? My kids don't know what a radio is. Like we have a radio in the car, so they know what a car radio is. But like a radio, okay. So radio buttons mean you can have one button pushed at a time. If you push the other button, the other one comes unpushed. They're like pretty cool, mechanically connected typically. This isn't mechanical or whatever, but we drag some radio buttons in here, and I have some radio buttons. And we grab another one here. Again, ugly is fine. That's no worries here. Now these have a group. Where do I do my group? My goodness. I think it's the default group. Because you will group together radio buttons to say these ones all belong together. And by default, I think it gives us all of them. We're not seeing it? It's fine. Maybe it's just set in the designer already. I just want to see what it does here. Radio button, radio button, radio button. Where's my group? It's not here. Okay, I'm a little confused. That's okay. So 1, 2, okay. So it's grouping them for me. If you had a more interesting form, everyone likes to do like, hey, I'm going to order a coffee, and then you have like a radio button for your type of cream and a radio button for your type of sugar. You obviously want to be able to have both cream and sugar for people. So you don't want them all grouped together. Let's just go Google it here. So Windows form, radio button grouping. Stack Overflow looks good. Put them in a group box. There we go. So if I put them in a group box, sounds like the right answer here. So I can have a distinct, stop my program, I get my toolbox. So it's not in the common controls list. That's okay. So if you go to your search here, you can search things, and here's a group box. There we go. And then in this group box now, I can put my radio buttons inside the group box. I think that will probably do it for me here. Does it move them now? Yep. So that should group them together. Again, you're not going to have to do that, but this is if you wanted to do a little point of sale system, these sort of things are important. So we have some radio buttons here. Now, you can do things based on when they're clicked if you want to have event handling for these. So the event handler is generally when the check is changed. So it's either checked or unchecked. So something is changed here because you probably want to respond to that event and do something here. So what we'll generally do with this radio button then, we'll come back here and say, hey, for all of these, I want this check changed to be the same handler here. So this is where having a shared handler is pretty nice. We can say, okay, this one is what is going to happen. This method will happen when one of these boxes is changed or not here. And then I can say, hey, if my radio button of one is checked, this is a true or false. If it's checked, it'll be true. If it's not checked, it'll be false. I can do X, Y, or Z here, right? Else if my radio button 2 dot checked, sure, X, Y, or Z, and then else if it's not 1 or 2, it's got to be 3. Right? This is pretty easy process of elimination here. We could do something here, and then I don't know. We'll just take our what's our deduction label here? Deduction label. We'll set the text to just to see that this actually works in action here. So this is radio button 1. We'll do radio button 2, radio button 3. 2 and 3. So it's generally easier to put them all together with the same handler because I probably am looking at which one of these things is checked. If they all have a separate handler, it's unchecked changed, not on being checked. So like as it unchecks, it will still fire the event and lots of things will happen. So all build errors. Oh no, we broke it. Oh, I'm missing a curly brace. There we go. That was an easy one. All right, so now we get radio button 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So what we want to do with the radio buttons here is we want to now give people options for which brackets they want to use. We'll add in one more step here where I can pick the single brackets or I can pick the married brackets. There's more than that, but don't worry about those. We don't need to get into all of them here. So just do singled and married filing jointly is the easiest way. So we'll just have two options here. Which tax estimator would you like to use? Now you notice a lot of these are doubled, but not all of them. And this upsets me as a married individual here because if my spouse had a job and also made a bunch of money like I do as a software developer, we run into problems. It doesn't actually affect me, but I'm still salty about it here. So when you file jointly, the doubled value here, right, is it 90, 180 is fine. So this 270, where is it here? Did they fix it? No, this one here, yeah. So married filing jointly, once you make over $647,000, which is a decent amount of money, I'm not saying, you know, they shouldn't be paying their taxes, but and you have two people, so if both people in the household earn 500,000, you're paying a lot more money at the 37% tax rate than if each person made 500,000. Nobody pays money at this 37% tax rate. Again, just that has nothing to do with this. I'm sorry. So we'll have checkbox the radio buttons then to flip between the two, and the other thing that changes then is the standard deduction as well. Deduction is different for married and individuals. Nope, that's the brackets. Deductions. Yeah, right here. So it is doubled. That looks right. If it actually doubles, so at least you get the deduction doubled. So this will also change in your calculations. Again, the arithmetic's not the important part here. We have this function from my example that probably works if you just copy paste that method. The point here is we're going to practice using some Forms UI stuff. Put in some text boxes, put in some buttons, put in some labels, change the text of the labels, make life happy. Right? Have a little bit of fun's probably the wrong word. It's not a very interesting program at this point here, but we're just playing with some of the tools. That sound reasonable? All right, so let me go put that out here. I need a new classroom link. So we're going to have a new GitHub repository for every project. It just makes life easy, so you'll have to go through the clone process again. Keeps you from changing files and then be like, why did you change this file? And you're like, I didn't mean to change the file. And I say, well, it was already due. You can't change the file. No one wants that, right? That's no fun. So 97, winter 2023, project 1. There we go. So this is C# template. I think the process worked well for everyone. I think I only had one person email me with questions about Git. Have you guys used that before? You folks used that before? Okay, I'm sorry you haven't. You really should. Yeah. Okay, awesome. It's a fantastic tool, and that's where code belongs, or some sort of source control tool, not uploading files to Canvas, because that's awful. All right, so we go make a new assignment here for this. So project 1. Yeah.
We make this project, like, with the files, the a different pathway.
So it's a different folder. So it'll, instead of, yeah, so documents, GitHub, that's the wrong documents. GitHub. I have, instead of project 0, it'll be project 1.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So the same process, a different process.
Yep, just a new folder for it. Yep, that's all. So this will be due next week. Again, this will be the last one that has a 1 week turnaround here. And I'm assuming, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, that this is not a lot of work and hopefully just an exercise for these projects. 6? Why noon? Didn't I put a 6 in there?
You put 60 and defaulted to noon.
Okay, sure. Yeah, why not? So turn in the website URL, submit the URL to the repository, repeat project 0, this time Windows Form or XAML or Maui app. I don't recommend the Maui app. You're welcome to have at it though. Go for it. If you want some bonus points for doing the Maui, I will give you bonus points. They won't be worth very much, but they'll be bonus points and you'll feel good about it. Go for it. Yeah.
Profit page, you just delete profit you did, just like making a little app.
Yep. Yeah, with a form we can click on. So now instead of typing text into the black box, which is terrible, no one does anymore, we have a form that you can click on. It's much more interesting. And clicking buttons is fun. I don't know. It's just like you can use your mouse. I don't know. To allow the user to pick single or married joint brackets. Let me give you the MoneyChimp link in case I think I forgot to give you that last time. And then be sure to use the correct standard deduction depending on the selection. So display all the same stuff. Taxes owed at each percentage, total and percentages of income. Do I need to repeat it all? Is this okay? Okay, awesome. That's the plan. Again, sorry, it's a little bit of a short night. I still feel like crap, but we can get this done, have some fun, play with some Forms apps. Starting next week, we'll get back into the book, start doing more advanced C# stuff, look at all the cool bells and whistles, and then do a slightly more interesting project that we'll have 2 weeks to work on. It should be a little bit more fun. Yeah, question?
Now it's probably like a minute or two late to class, but can you go over the syllabus quiz or like how that's?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, I forgot to do this. I was going to do it, then I went to the ER, and it was just a bad week. So there is a quiz for the syllabus here. It's free points. Please just go take it. One of the things that you do in it is you agree to the academic integrity policy. So when I have to fail people for cheating, this is part of my documentation I give to the dean's office, and I say, look, they agreed to the policy. They knew what the policy was. They cheated anyway. They failed the class. And the dean's office says, okay, thank you. That's not the only reason there's a syllabus quiz. There's a couple other questions, which are super easy. I think I can even, viewing it is difficult. I don't remember. It's fine. It's 6 questions. It's really fast. Take it at some point. And then later tonight, I'll post a quiz on Windows Forms. It's open book, open notes. I mean, there's no book here. I'm sorry. Just super quick questions on answering about Windows Forms. Like, yes, they're event driven. They don't just run top to bottom and stop. They sit and wait for users to respond. Those sorts of things about controls, text boxes, and labels. And shouldn't be anything hard on it here. Well, so there's nothing in the book for the forms for this one, but later on we'll get stuff back out of the book. But this way we'll have 2 quizzes under our belts and 3 points. The quizzes are there to generally when there's a book to get you to read it. But for this forms thing, it's like, can you tell me a couple things about forms? It won't be too bad. If you have questions, let me know. A lot of you found the Discord. Thank you. I like Discord. You don't have to like it if you don't want it. Email's great too. Text me, call me. Anything is fine. All right. Thanks, folks. Thanks for hanging online. Gamer, I wasn't going to do a rubric. Just it's a participation points for it. Let me stop.